think I heard a lot of bless your little hearts out there this morning. Y'all want to be honest, just being honest. So, if you're a guest here with us today, we hope that you have been made feel welcome here, because this is not our church, it's Christ's church. And if you're a regular attender here, we are about striving to make others feel welcome to be part of the body of Christ, because there's three words that we exist to do. We exist to share help, hope, and home. Help for people's lives, hope for their future, and a place to call home. And yes, that is thunder you were hearing outside, not the subs rumbling a little bit. It's trying to rain a little bit out there. And so to me, that's one of the things I love is a good thunderstorm. I'm at home, sitting at home, relaxing. My wife doesn't like thunderstorms or hearing the wind blow or the rain fall. I'm like, bring it on, bring it on. I just heard there tonight, it's like, I know the master of the wind, So, but anyway, it is great to be here today. And I love coming together. Man, what a great time to worship today. I mean, those songs, there's joy in the house of the Lord today. Man, I love that. Yes, if there's any place in the world there should be joy, it's when we get together and encourage one another. And I just want to stress that. If you come in, you're like, well, what am I supposed to do? You encourage somebody. You smile at somebody. You shake their hand. You pay them a compliment. Be sincere, but make sure you're encouraging someone. Hebrews says that's one of the reasons we come together. And so I hope that you make that your goal. And you might say, well, if I don't show up, nobody misses me. Well, maybe it's because you're not trying to do something not to be missed. You know what I mean? I mean, be one of those people, because I've heard people say, where's so-and-so? I miss them. They always shake my hand, or they always smile at me, or they always have these comforting words to say. And so, be one of those people who just makes someone's day. And in our world today, it's hard to find honest people. I mean, it is. It's hard to find that honest person. But just like my friend Scott Gold right here is a pretty honest person. And he told me one day, he said, Dave, I've got this dog I'm trying to sell. I said, really? Well, that's interesting, because there's a lot of dogs out there. You might give him away. Oh, no. He is a special dog. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, what makes it special? He can talk. And I'm like, okay, Scott, I love you, brother. I love you, but he can talk? I'm telling you, Dave, I'm just saying, Dave, you come over to the house, and you find out for yourself. So I drive over to Scott's house. Scott comes outside. I said, where's this dog, Scott? He said, come around back. You'll see him. So we walk back here, and there's this dog, pretty good-sized dog. It looked like any other ordinary dog. And I said, okay, Scott. He said, go ahead and talk to him. See if he don't answer you. I'm feeling kind of foolish. And I walk up to him and said, hey, my name's Dave. The dog speaks up and says, my name's George. How you doing? And I thought, whoa, look at Scott. Scott said, go, keep talking to him. So I said, how did this happen here? How does a dog talk? Well, when I was born as a pup, I just listened to my master, Scott. And I'm just saying, the dog said, I was listening to my master, Scott, and I understood him, and I just started talking. And I've lived an interesting life, because I went to the vet, and the vet wanted to hire me. So I spent quite a few years working for the vet, because animals come in, the vet couldn't figure out what was wrong. I understood the animals, and I could talk to the veterinarian. But after a while, I got bored with that job. And so, sure enough, they came to check out my master, Scott, because they thought he was a little wacky there when he was telling people he had a talking dog. And so the CIA even came in and investigated, and they hired me because, espionage. Who's going to suspect the dog as being a spy? And so for years, I worked for the CIA, did some traveling and everything. And so finally, after quite a few years, I got bored. And now I'm just retired here to home. So I look back at Scott, I'm like, wow, Scott, how much do you want for this dog? Scott said, $20. I said, $20? It's a talking dog. Oh, he's the biggest liar you ever seen. That dog's never left the backyard of this house. You see, I can thank you, Scott, for that joke. Scott would call me at times. Hey, Pastor Dave, you got a few minutes? Yeah, let me tell you a joke. So he makes my day, so thank you for that. But anyway, sometimes we look at this, around our world, it's hard to find honest people. It's hard to find those that we can trust. And man, if you're like me in this world today, you look at our culture and you turn on the news or you get on the internet and you're like, what in the world has happened to our culture? It's like it's been invaded by aliens, and they're not even smart aliens. It's like they didn't fly here, they dropped off their planet, What is going on? But Satan loves to use that to divide us, to distract us from being who we're supposed to be. And if you've heard me preach, you've heard me say that I can easily be distracted by all the junk that's out there today, and we get distracted from the main thing. We've always got to keep the main thing, and that is living for Jesus. So this morning, we want to look at this sermon, and it's entitled, My Neighborhood, My Mission Field. My neighborhood, my mission field. Now, there are many of us, like I said, who would just look at our society today, our culture, and just think, I don't even want to be around these folks. What in the world has happened? But that's Satan's plan. And we all, in our cultures, different states have different cultures, of course, different countries definitely have different cultures. And so some of us, if you were to take me to Baltimore or Washington, D.C. and say, Dave, I want you to live here, I go into culture shock, okay? And because there's different things there. And I'm sure that folks who moved to West Virginia would say, it's a little different here in West Virginia. So I found this little thing that I thought was pretty fun. And since I'm a West Virginian and born in West Virginia, I can actually say these things. So here's some things that you will never hear a West Virginian ever say. I'll take Shakespeare for 1,000, Alex. Another one in West Virginia would never say, duct tape won't fix that. Yeah. Or West Virginia would not say, you can't feed a dog that. Dogs, when I grew up, they ate just anything you had left over. And here's a good one. West Virginians would never say, no kids in the back of the pickup, it's not safe. No. You won't hear a West Virginian say, wrestling is fake. No. Or, honey, did you make that donation to Greenpeace yet? No. Or, here's one, we're vegetarians. Yeah. Or give me the small bag of pork rinds. Okay? That ain't happening. Deer heads distract from the decor around here. Spitting is a nasty habit. You won't hear West Virginians say that. Or I couldn't find a thing at Walmart today. No. Here's one. You will hear Dave say, trim the fat off that steak. Man, one time my wife was frying country ham and she was cutting it. I said, what in the world are you doing? You know how much feed it took to put that fat on that pig? That's the good stuff right there, okay? So, anyway, you won't hear West Virginia say, them tires are too big for that truck. No, sir. Here's one you won't hear Dave say, unsweetened tea just tastes better. Yeah. Would you like your fish boiled or poached? Nope. My fiance, Paula Jo, is registered at Tiffany's. Nope. Little Debbie snacks have too many grams of fat in them. Mm-hmm. You won't hear a West Virginian say, here's a good one. She's too old to be wearing that bikini, I'm telling you. You won't hear a West Virginian say, does the salad bar have bean sprouts? No. And here's one, hey, here's an episode of Hee Haw we've never seen before. Yeah. Or, you cook those green beans too long. I tell my wife, when you cook that broccoli, she's like, you cook the vegetables out, take a pill. Cook the broccoli, man. Cook that stuff down. So you won't hear a West Virginian say that. You won't hear a West Virginian say, I'll have a grapefruit instead of biscuits and gravy. Mm-hmm. And lastly, you won't hear a West Virginian say, we don't keep firearms in this house. Yeah. But seriously, our cultures are different in different places. But, when we think about our communities, we are to be alike. Sometimes our culture changes because we allow things to come in that don't please God. And like I said, we all have different, when you travel around and, the further you get north and you ask for sweet tea and they look at you like you're crazy and say there's sugar on the table and here's the tea and you like it and it don't work that well, But we do have those kind of different cultures. But we're going to be reading about the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 17. Acts chapter 17 this morning. And so if you have your Bibles and you'd like to follow on, that's good. If you have a smartphone, you have a Bible. And I challenge you to read along, even go home and read a little bit before you get the context and follow along in the story. But Acts chapter 17, reading about a guy named Paul. Luke has written this because he is recording the history of the early church. Now, at first, the message of Jesus was only going to the Jewish people. And, wow, that one shook the ceiling right there. It's a good one. And he went to the Jewish people. And then it spread to the Gentiles, the message of salvation. The Apostle Paul was a Jew of Jews. And he was persecuting the church. How dare they spread this message about the way, about this Jesus. And so he was persecuting the church. And so he then has an encounter with Jesus, and the Apostle Paul becomes a follower of Jesus, an apostle of Jesus. He is a messenger for Jesus. And so now he is become the persecuted. He is persecuted. And if you will read there earlier in chapter 17, and you'll see people who were turning against him. He had to be moved from one city to the next. And then they followed him there because he's preaching about Jesus, and they couldn't have that. And so they move him on, and he's going to leave this one area, Berea, and his companions, Silas and Timothy, are going to meet him. So they send him on to Athens. And Paul finds himself in the great intellectual and cultural center of Athens. And this is where we're going to pick up this morning reading. Timothy and Silas have not gotten there yet. Paul is in Athens. So let's pray. Father, we thank you for this day. I thank you for letting us come together and praise you, God. How awesome that is. And I thank you that you love somebody like me in all your power and strength and might. Thank you for everyone that's here. Now, God, you know me, and you know that I do not have the ability to speak your word the way you need it spoken. So I'm asking the Holy Spirit, you speak to all of us today so we hear what you want us to hear. God, help me to just be a mouthpiece for you, and forgive me. God, I am a man of unclean lips, as Isaiah said, and God, I just love that you still choose to speak through me, and I'm amazed at that and humbled. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Acts chapter 17, verse 16. Acts 17, 16. And while Paul was waiting for them, Silas and Timothy, in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So as we read that one verse, we can see Paul's passion. We can see Paul's passion was stirred. His what? His passion. We can see that his passion was stirred. And Paul was an educated Jew. He followed the Jewish law. He met Jesus, and things began to change. And so now Paul is this dedicated follower of Jesus. Paul is now a messenger for Jesus. And he ends up in this great city. And he is alone. Imagine this. Paul goes into this city and he's alone. So he's probably touring the area. He is waiting on Silas and Timothy. And he's touring the area. And as he's touring the area, he begins to notice, what are all these idols around here? Why are there idols everywhere I go? There are idols everywhere, set up everywhere, even by people's homes. They're just everywhere. And this stirs his passion. It stirs his passion. Ancient writers estimated they had thousands of idols there in Athens. And so Paul's passion is stirred for Jesus. And probably he was thinking things like, how could these people be so blind? Oh, this aggravates me. I used to know a preacher, and he's going on to be with the Lord. His name is John Holes, and he started preaching about sin. His nickname was Bulldog Bose. And honestly, love you, John, but he looked like a bulldog when he just had that look. And I love him in pieces. But he used to get up there and preach, and he started talking about sin. And you knew he was getting wound up, and his face would start to screw up. And he'd rub his face like this, and he'd say, that makes me mad. Mad enough to fight a buzzsaw. Was always this thing about sin. Well, I think Paul was mad enough to fight a buzzsaw. He was so shook up as he walked around and thinking, how in the world do people turn against an awesome God and worship this junk? So he got stirred up. He didn't even wait. His passion got so stirred up, he didn't wait for Silas and Timothy, but he began to speak out. Let's look on there more in chapter 17, in verse 17 to 21. 17 to 21. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. And some of them asked, what is this blubberer trying to say? And others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. And they said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. And then, then they took him and brought him to the meeting place, the Areopagus, where they said to him, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean. All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. So as we read this, I want us to notice the culture. I want you to notice the culture. What are we going to notice?
Culture.
The culture. You see, Paul finds himself in this culture, or the people who make up this culture. Paul goes, first of all, into the synagogues, as was his practice, because at least there he could find people who were at least God-fearing, and he could begin to speak with them. And so he goes in there, and he finds, a lot of times, the regular crowd. Here they are. We're here to worship God. We're here. He finds those type of people in this culture. And then he goes into the marketplace, and then there he finds the people who just living life every day. It's all about what they can purchase in the marketplace and what the day brings, and how, everything's dependent upon the day in the marketplace, selling things, not really concerned about anything. And then they also have people that are called Epicureans. And this group of this philosophy were people who were pleasure seekers. They were pleasure seekers. I mean, they believed that the world happened by chance. And they believed that it never really was planned out. And if there were any gods, then they certainly were disinterested in mankind. And so man was left to himself to find pleasure and to sort of be a god unto himself. And there's nothing after death, by the way, is what these people believe. There's no heaven, there's no hell, there's nothing. And so their philosophy was centered upon man and upon his pleasure. Then there was another group called the Stoics, and they are sort of a self-control group, a disciplined group. And God exists in everything. That's what they believe. God exists in everything. That was their belief. And some of them, these Stoics were kind of a messed up group too. Some of them believe that if they can keep themselves so self-disciplined, they can improve some things and actually can control their destiny. While other Stoics, they kind of just, didn't do much because they couldn't control anything anyway. It was just going to be their destiny, so kind of let life live on, and never really managed a whole lot. And then there was those philosophers who just had nothing to do but sit around and talk about the newest ideas and just imagine what all was going on. And so we see Paul, his passion is stirred because of the culture in which he finds himself. And so we can see that Paul, though, is not just going around in circles. Let's read Acts 17, 22 to 23. Man, I love this right here. I love this part of the scripture. Acts 17, 22 to 33. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' And so you're ignorant of the very thing you worship. And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you today. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth. And he does not live in temples built by human hands. He is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out the appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think of the divine being like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance. But now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. And when they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some of them sneered, and others said, "We want to hear you again on this subject." At this, Paul left the council. You see, I love that. Man, wow, him explaining God that way, that is powerful. But we see through this, we see the plan. The plan. What do we see through it?
The plan.
The plan. We see the plan that Paul has here. Paul doesn't allow his passion to get him off track. Now, maybe he did for a little bit. He's human. He might have gotten so frustrated, so angry. Who in the world? Why in the world? Why is this happening? But he didn't let it get him off track. He allowed it to direct him to do what he should do. And Paul didn't allow the culture, the people of that day, to pull him from his beliefs in Jesus Christ. He did not allow the culture to do that. But instead, He would use wisdom. Oh, I love this. I love this. I can almost picture this in my mind. As he thinks about and prays about and allows the Holy Spirit to lead him, how am I going to address these people? The inscription to the unknown God. Wow, what a message. What a sermon. Guys, down here you have this inscription to the unknown God. I'm here to tell you about this unknown God today. Boom! I love that right there. The plan. I love that. And he has their attention because they're always wanting to hear things new and what's coming up. And so they go like, huh? What are you talking about? He has their attention. And you can say, what's this got to do with me? Here's this dude many years ago who's put in this crazy place like Athens, and then, he starts preaching the gospel to people. What's it got to do to me? And I believe that we, as Christ followers, need to do just what Paul did. And here it is. Pursue the mission. Pursue the mission. What do we need to do? Pursue the mission. Okay, if y'all got it, here we go. What do we need to do? Pursue the mission. I'm not a preacher. Didn't say that. We're going to see here what we can do. But if you're like me, you find yourself in a world that you are scratching your head going like, this stuff doesn't even make sense. What in the world? No common sense. It rouses my passion. Now, I have said that when all this junk started coming down here in the last few years, God did open my eyes, and I'm thankful. I love America. I do. But I realized that God was saying to me, Dave, you have too much faith in America and not me. Now, don't get me wrong. I love America. My heart breaks for America. I do. But I realized, too, that my faith was in America. And God never said, your faith is to be in America. Because men will let you down, period. But your main faith, your main goal is Jesus. And so, we should have a passion for Jesus Christ. We should have a passion to know that no matter what happens in this life, it's about the next life. And some folks have a terrible time dealing with that. What do you mean? What do you mean? This is all I see. This is all I can touch. This is all I know. And let me tell you, you're going to be very disappointed. Because we never know today we're going to leave this life. Because death is no respecter of persons or age or anything else. We don't know, but I know one thing. I know one thing, that my Jesus is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, and He has promised me that when I leave this life, I have another home, okay? That's what He's promised me. Yeah, I think that Jesus is worth a hand clap, man, I'm going to tell you. And so, what we need to do, though, is to be aware of our culture that we live in. To be aware of our culture. In Romans 12, Paul writes this here, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, because God has been so merciful to us. He is so merciful to me. That's why I love that song. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good, because I don't deserve a stinking bit of it. But yet His mercy. So he says, offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. Ooh, that's not easy. David's going to confess that. Not easy. In other words, here's some things you're not supposed to do, David. Here's some things you're supposed to. But God, I want to do. No. Don't do. Offer your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Jason mentioned this morning in worship there, if I think I'm not getting the good things that I want, maybe we've got our thoughts on the wrong, quote, good things. And God knows they aren't good for us. And that's true. God, sometimes He does say, you really want that? You really want it? Okay, go after it, buddy. We learn a lesson. But many times we think, this is what makes me happy. This is what I seek after. There is if you want to call it a version of the Bible, but if you read the guy who did this translation, the Message, he basically said, I wrote this. He said, don't put away your study Bibles. Don't put away your other translations. He said, I wrote this so that people could have an understanding of the flow of the Bible. And so he, when you read about why Peterson wrote the Message, it wasn't to do away with the NIV and the King James and all those. He was just saying, I did this to try to help people with the flow of it. Still use your study Bibles. And so I love the way he words Romans 1 and 2, Romans 12, 1 and 2. So here's the way he words it. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Pretty plain, pretty simple. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Here we go. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Wow. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down through its levels of maturity, God brings out the best in you and develops well-formed maturity in you. Man, you see, Paul is a good example. He didn't let the culture change him. Okay, this Jesus will just be another one of the gods. No, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And so, we need to realize as Christians today, and so many times, we can follow our culture for our own pleasures. I mean, where's Athens today? What happens? Let me tell you what happens when people do that. They're no longer a great nation anymore. You can look at Rome, like, what happened to them? And then you look at America and go, oh man, this is so sad. Because when we become a culture that seeks its own pleasure, that seeks its own attitudes and to satisfy ourselves, we will cause our own demise. And so, when we look today at our culture, we can see that things are falling apart. And we need to turn to God and make sure that we're following God. Because what happens is sometimes we can say, no, I don't want to be mean. And so I don't want to tell people, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that. And so we don't want to, we don't want to hurt their feelings. So we kind of change the way of the designer of God. I found this video, and I don't want you to look at it when it first comes up and go like, oh, I don't like that news station. I don't want you to look at the commentator, the guy asking questions. I want you to listen to the content of this young lady, okay? Watch this video, very interesting. Looks like she has, I don't know if you can help her, Jason. And when she does that, I will continue on speaking and come back to this. For some reason, the thing is frozen. And if you have to play it and pull it, it's over there in videos is where it's at. So I don't know what happened to that thing. But what happens is when we're in a culture, and this culture begins to say, we're going to change the basic structure of what God says about life, we don't realize how we affect everyone else in a very negative way. Now, as soon as I think y'all get it up, as soon as you can get it to play, you just hit play and I'll shut up. Y'all like, is that the secret? Every Sunday we're going to hit play and he'll shut up. Man, I'm glad we found that out. I was joking one time about Jimmy Piles being a funeral director. I said, yeah, if I start going too long up there, Jimmy stands in the back and waves a chicken leg to shut me out. But anyway, but when we think about our culture today, our culture around us is turning from God. And sometimes it seems like you're not kind if you don't accept this or accept that. And here's what we need to realize too, that no matter what we do, we need to do it in love. And realizing that sometimes people have difficulties, as you'll see hopefully in this video that's going to come up. Like I said, even if you got to go out, go back over to where it originally is and play it off that would be good. Because I want this young lady's testimony to speak to our hearts today and what happened to her. So I'm going to slumber the video. So I want you to listen to what she says happened to her. And what happened is because someone left the main plan. Someone had left the main plan and it destroyed people's lives. And so I'm just going to give them another second.
I'm Helena. I'm 23 years old. When I was about 15, I started using Tumblr. I had an eating disorder since I was pretty young. There's a lot of messages that said, if you feel bad about your body, that means you're trans. I was just going through this period of like, I don't like how I'm treated as a cis person. I don't want to be cis because cis means you're uncool and you're privileged and you're an oppressor and you're bad, and I don't want to be that. In that way, I was really incentivized to try to figure out a way to make my voice heard in these communities. And obviously I can't change my race. I can't really change my sexuality. So the only thing left was to start playing around with the gender stuff. So I decided to call myself a demi-girl, which is one of the 40 million genders. And that basically means that I'm mostly a girl, but I'm a little bit not a girl, which is just like, what does that even mean? And then after that, I went to demi-boy. And then after that, I went to gender fluid. And after that, I eventually went to trans boy. But all this took like 2 or 3 years of just going through this repetitive cycle of changing this identity, then changing it again, and it was just never enough. There was a lot of hopelessness for a long time, a lot of regret. The feeling of regret was intense.
It's a moving interview, and there's a lot more of it in the episode. Helena joins us on set now. Thanks so much for coming out. There's something so sad about that. First of all, thank you for speaking up, because your voice does matter, I think, in this conversation. But you felt what every young woman I've ever met felt at a certain age, which is uncomfortable with yourself. And it feels like you were exploited at that moment of weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, it's completely normal for not only young girls, but often young boys too, to feel uncomfortable with themselves, uncomfortable with their body. But we have this ideology that is especially prevalent online that says that if you have those feelings, that means you're trans. I mean, there are literally people who say, if you don't even like your voice on a recording, that's a sign of gender dysphoria, and you need to go see a medical professional because you're trans.
Talk about taking advantage of people. So how do you, and this is all explained in greater depth in the documentary, but how do you feel now at 23 looking back on what happened?
I feel honestly grateful for the experience, because it's taught me a lot about the world and about myself, but I really feel afraid for these other young girls like myself who they might not be. You know, I consider myself lucky that I was able to get out of it unscarred really medically, but there's so many young people who can't say the same, and psychologically as well. I mean, it's just devastating to, especially from a young age, be lied to by adults at school and by medical professionals and told that your body is wrong, you need to change it, you need to get hormones, you need to get surgeries. That's devastating for a young person. So I'm just really concerned for younger girls and boys like I once was, being led down this path. And being hurt by it.
It's a failure of male leadership, of adult leadership, and it does seem like some of the steps are medically irreversible.
Absolutely. I mean, there's all sorts of, you know, the White House actually just put out a chart yesterday that says that some of these steps are reversible or partially reversible, but that's such an oversimplification of the truth. I mean, when you go on a cross-sex hormone, like, that's going to give you not just physical changes, but psychological experiences that you can't just act like they never happened. You can't just take it back.
Yes, and I hope people are hearing you with open minds, with tolerance. Are they?
There's a lot of people out there, especially parents, who are really thankful for what I'm saying, because they see that their young girl or their young boy is going through this, and the school is telling them, you need to affirm them they're trans, you need to transition them. All their doctors are telling them you need to transition them. And these parents, they know that their child should not be having these cosmetic procedures. So there's a lot of parents who are really thankful. There are other young people who are really thankful that I'm saying what I'm saying, but obviously, you know, you have the trans activists and the trans community that exhibits some very unhealthy kind of cult-like dynamics who are really upset about this.
Man, you are so articulate and thoughtful at 23. It's it's remarkable.
Thank you.
People who have suffered like you have sometimes get deeper.
Yeah, you learn a lot. Like I said, I learned a lot.
Thank you for talking to me.
You know, it is sad in our community because as a church, we're living in a culture that wants to say everything's all right, everything's okay. And yet we as a church cannot say, are these people a bunch of goofballs or what? No, we need to lovingly show them the way of Jesus. You see, the problem is that when we begin to trust our own feelings, our own hearts, we will go down the wrong path. We need a guide. We need a guide to follow. I remember as a young boy sitting in a class, and Mr. Harold Lease was the teacher. And I remember Mr. Lease was a carpenter, he was a farmer, and Mr. Lease talked about using God's Word as your guide. And he talked about this sawmill. This guy, what he did was he cut the first board, and he had a pattern. But what he started doing was using the next board as a pattern, and the next board, and throwing, so using the original pattern. And what happened when he got to the end of sawing these boards? It was nowhere near the original. Why? Because someone used a different pattern. And so we as a church need to be like the Apostle Paul and have a plan. We need to be passionate, but we need to love these people. How could you dislike that young lady? How could you dislike her? Well, wait a minute. Did you see what she was when she was a teenager? She was a confused young lady who nobody was telling her what she really needed to hear. That's what she was. In church, we've got a mission. And it's tough because we need to lovingly say, you know what? I don't have the permission to move the lines in life. I don't have the permission to move the lines. There's an old movie, and some of you younger people are like, who is he talking about when I say Lucille Ball or Lucy? And some of you are like, who? You know, comedian, redhead comedian. And so this old movie was Miss Grant Takes Richmond. And they were looking to hire a secretary that wasn't too smart. And so they go to this school, and there's Lucy, and they hire her. And what they did, they had this office, like a realtor office, that was their front for a booking agency. And so they had to make it look good. So they were going to do these low-cost homes for families. And Lucy was going to make something of herself. And so she was helping it happen. Didn't realize in the back room this bookie thing was going on. They were betting and everything. And so anyway, they had to really show a good front, so they lined out these new houses. And these people coming in, they were putting money down. You know what's happening to the money, but they were putting this money down. Anyway, they had to make it look good, so they went ahead and lined off where the houses were. And some of the ladies come in, and some of you men, okay, shut up, Dave. You know when you're building a house and you get stuff laid out, and they're like, oh, no, I need this. So they came to Lucy, and they're like, this kitchen isn't big enough. And Lucy's like, oh, I see what you mean. And she takes and she moves the lines over. This won't hurt. And she moves that line, and she goes down, but that bathroom, we have 3 great, we got to do. So she moves this line and moves that line, and then the company comes in, and they start getting ready for the footers to start pouring concrete. They're like, what the world just happened? What happened to this mess? Somebody moved the lines, and it wasn't the master designer, okay? And it messed it up. It messed it up. The movie has a happy ending, by the way, if you want to check that one out. But anyway, it messed it up. Man, we can't move the lines. No matter how much we want, no matter how much we think this person needs a bigger kitchen, we don't have the right to move the lines, church. We don't. We need to stand on truth, but stand in love in a culture that's falling apart. We need to love the people who are confused, because let me tell you, just like that young lady, oh yeah, you know, you have been there, some of you are there right now. There's things you do not like about yourself, and if you could, you would change them. And then when all this stinking world is saying, it's because you were born of the wrong sex, and you need to change that. There's something going on in your life. You can't change the master plan. You can't change the master plan, church, but neither can we be hateful and mean about it. We've got to find ways to make sure that we are sticking to the master plan, just like the Apostle Paul, and we are passionate, and that passion will move us into a culture that is strange to us. We are a peculiar people. And so, man, there's times, my life group jokes with me, because I've said it before, that I have this bumper sticker problem, because I pull up and I see a bumper sticker, and I'm like, it's one of those people. Yeah. And God says, love those people, Dave. Love those people, Dave. It doesn't say that everything's all right, it's all flowers and roses. No. No, because God is God. But God's a loving God, yes. But God is also a God of order. And you can't mess up God's order. You can't do it. We don't have the right to move the lines, church. We just need to be able to help the folks. And you know what? As Jason mentioned earlier, sometimes we think we're wanting these things and we aren't getting them. Maybe the things we want are not what God, the master planner, has put in order for us. And I'm going to tell you, honestly, I'm standing up here today, and there was a day I said, I will not be a preacher. Ever. I was in youth ministry. I will not be a preacher. I see how preachers get treated. I'm not going to be a preacher. And God laughed at me, I don't know how many times. And can I tell you, I love what I'm doing. I love it. God said, now I will tell you that I live in fear a lot of times. I go, yeah, it is the weirdest thing. Because I know. Jake and I were talking about this. I said, sometimes I'll work on a sermon, and I work on it, and I put my work on, like, God, this thing stinks. It's often. It stinks, God. I'm putting work in it. And then God shows up on Sunday morning. And people are like, wow, Dave. I'm like, who am me? That scares the daylights out of me. I ain't going to take credit for what God did. And I was like, you almost feel like, what's the use to do the work? God's going to show up. But it's like, Dave, you do the work, and I'll show up. You loaf, I'm not going to show up. You do what you're supposed to do, I'll do what I'm supposed to do. All right, Dave? So I just want y'all to know, Dave's not the awesome preacher at all. It's God, okay? It's God. But God tells us in our lives, you just do what you're supposed to do. You keep the lines where they're supposed to be. But God, this poor person, yeah, but you love them. And you try to show them the right way. Because like that girl said, there's a lot of scarred people walking around. She's one of the blessed ones. Because many of them commit suicide. Many of them go into a life of drugs. And their lives are a wreck. In church, we got the answer. And it's not always easy. And sometimes you're looked at by the world. You bigot, you, what the world? No, we love folks. And we want them to know the love of God. Because someday this whole world is going to be gone. It don't make no difference anyway. It's going to be gone. And God calls us to do what He wants us to do. And I love this here in Acts 17:34, closing out this scripture. Acts 17:34. Paul goes through all of this mess. Some people are laughing at the resurrection? Really? You believe that this guy rose from the dead? And they left. 17:34. Some of the people became followers of Paul, which basically means they were listening to his teaching. Paul would tell you they're not a follower of his if you read any of Paul's writing. And they believed. And among them was Dionysus and a member of the Areopagus, and also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others. What? In other words, in that culture, some people listened to the message of Jesus and they followed Jesus. Guys, a lot of this culture is right here in Hampshire County. Don't walk around blind saying, well, I'm glad we don't have any of that stuff here in Hampshire County. Yeah, you're sleeping somewhere, man. I don't know where you're sleeping, but you're sleeping. But we need to be out there sharing the love of Jesus. We don't need to be kicking them and beating them up and telling them they're going to hell and everything. We need to be showing them the love of Jesus and let them know who God is. And yeah, there's going to be many who'll spit in your face and walk away and say, you're just an idiot. But then there'll be others who'll say, tell me more about this Jesus. Tell me more about Him. And maybe you're not a preacher, but let me tell you, you can share love. You can share whatever gift God has given you to share love, the love of God, and show them the way. We have a job. It's our neighborhood. It's our mission. We can complain. Oh, you ever see what's I remember the day when? Oh man, yeah, I can tell you I remember the day when you can bring your gun to school and show your teacher your new gun. You can leave your gun out in your vehicle because you was going hunting after school. I remember all those days. But you know what? We have been blessed here in Hampshire County to have what we have. And God is calling us to get back closer to the pattern. Don't move the lines for anybody else's sake, because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You're not the master planner. Get that line back where it belongs and show people the love of Jesus. I'm telling you, if you don't know Jesus today, you're missing the boat. Well, He must be a mean God. He won't let me have what I want. And I look back in life and go, thank you, God, I didn't get what I want sometimes. Woo! Y'all have any of those moments? Anybody? Yeah, thank you, God, I didn't get what I wanted. Because that would not have been pretty. I'm going to tell you that much. This wouldn't have been good. And I'm thankful for that. God knows what's best for us. And this whole life is temporary. Oh my goodness, I just can't. I look back on life and, I don't know how many funerals I do, and sometimes I'm like, you know what, life is not kind. Time is not kind. It flies by quickly. You better know Jesus, because in heaven, I wouldn't even have to use my Andy Griffith clock I have hanging in my office, okay? Because there ain't no time up there. And God is good. And that's what really makes the difference. We live this life so that we can prepare for the next and take everybody we can along with us. And if you don't know this Jesus, and you're like, dude, I'm struggling with some stuff. I know. That's why Jesus came. Last week, Jason showed a video of Jordan Peterson, I think it was. And what Jordan Peterson was saying was so correct. That if you're going to follow Jesus, it's impossible, pretty much impossible for a man to do what Jesus asked you to do. Yeah? Problem with Jordan Peterson, we talked about this in the life group. We said, what's Jordan Peterson missing in this? He's a very intellectual guy, very smart. What's he missing? Somebody said, grace. Yes. Only through the grace of Jesus can we start following Him. And we're going to mess up. All of us are going to slack off. We're going to mess up. But His grace is there for us. This morning, His grace is there for you. You're like, Dave, I tried. Do you have the Holy Spirit helping you try? Have you accepted Jesus Christ? Have you been obedient to Him in baptism? Are you looking to Him to ask to help? You don't know what I've done. Don't matter. Don't matter. Jesus says, I don't care. That's why I came. And He even came so that Jordan Peterson could say, okay, I intellectually understand what you're saying, Jesus. Now I must accept your grace because I cannot measure up. Alert here. That's why Jesus came. None of us can. So today, let's be the church who allows our passion to stir us in the right direction, who looks at our culture and says we will not allow our culture to change our beliefs in Jesus, and then we take that plan into action to lovingly and ask for wisdom how to spread the love of Jesus. Let's be on mission. If you don't know Jesus, come on, get on board with the mission. It's a ride you'll never forget. It is a ride you won't be sorry for. I will never tell you that there aren't these dips. They're the dips. And sometimes you think, when I'm getting out of the dip, God. And then God brings you up. I tell you, when Jesus returns, you ain't coming off that dip, baby. You up there, okay? With Jesus. And so today, if you don't know him, why don't you come with him today? It's not my invitation. I'm nobody. It's the invitation of Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. Let's be standing and we'll pray. In our prayer closet,